everybody, and thank you so much for attending. I hope you can see my screen all right. So this is technology access and best practices for students who have low vision. There's a lot of information in this slide deck, so I'm going to kind of move through a little fast. But the information is here in case we get kind of stuck somewhere where there's some questions, and you guys can always kind of go back and review. And of course, like Kathy was saying, we're recording. Um, so I kind of chunked it out. The session is going to focus on best practices for modifying documents and using special software, hardware, and accessibility guidelines for people. Please note that the primary purpose of this presentation is low vision. It's not blindness solutions, it's low vision, because here's the thing. If you're a teacher visually impaired, you'll know this. And for the most part, if you have a student with a vision impairment, the chances are high, very high, that they have some usable vision. And by default, our bodies and our society and everything about where we live and the environment we exist in is made for visual access. And so by default, we are hardwired for that. So you have students and they are going to want to do the best they can to see it. There are situations where vision isn't an option, but that's not where this presentation sits. So I just wanted to make that point. So we have some points here. Like I said, lots to cover. The various types of vision loss, and they're very, very, very brief and abbreviated. Why use of font, spacing, color, and text in a document when giving it to a student with vision impairment, why those are important. Vision accessibility settings on tablets or your mainstream technology, assistive technologies that can be used to access hard copy material that's printed, not electronic. And if we have some time, we're going to talk about Bookshare, Learning Ally, and stuff like that. But again, all of this information is in the slide deck. So vision loss. Vision loss is a spectrum. It's like autism. Actually, I don't even like to call it a spectrum. What it is it's a giant globe, and you can be anywhere within that sphere. You can be, think of it as like a 3D dimensional globe sphere. You can be anywhere in there. The following slides are going to provide some just basic information. But here's the thing, vision impairment, it's not exclusive. It's kind of like if you have somebody with a disability, it's not like, oh, you only get one disability. Oh, no, that's not how disability works. That's not how life works either, folks. You can have more than one type of vision impairment. So we're going to talk about different types, but know that they can coexist with each other, which just adds to I'm just going to call it fun. It just adds to the complexity of things. Okay. So vision impairment types, there's diffuse loss, there's central loss, and peripheral loss. And there's also something called cerebral or cortical vision impairment. There's general challenges that are very common to everybody that has vision impairment, and kind of very common to everybody, to be honest. Visual fatigue or headaches due to eye strain. If you are somebody who's a big reader, and maybe or big using your devices, you can experience some eye strain after a time. But for some people that have vision impairments where their eyes are already a little bit more sensitive and susceptible, they're going to get that fatigue earlier, where you might be reading that book for 3 hours and then you start to be fatigued. That person might be reading the same material at a larger font for 20 minutes and hit that fatigue that much quicker. Also, sensitivity to light is a general challenge, but the thing is, you can be sensitive and have more problems with more light. You can have sensitivity and have problems if there isn't enough light. So depending on the student, the situation, the setup, lighting is a really big one. So I think those are probably the two biggest things to keep in mind when we're talking about overall challenges with vision impairment in general. So you have I have some examples here, and if you know me at all, you know I'm a really big fan of kittens. I love kittens. So I have a picture of a standard what anybody would see, and then what somebody with the vision impairment might see. So a diffuse loss, you have cataracts, aphakia, or somebody with no lenses. You have people that have uh, bad correction, high myopia. These kinds of things can cause extreme blurriness, like you're looking through saran wrap or wax paper. That's one type of loss, diffuse loss. Central vision loss is when everything looks, normal, except in the middle, you don't see what's right in front of you. You see things that are on the edges of your vision. And that's really more common in your older folks with your macular degeneration. But there is something called Stargardt's that young kids have. That's a juvenile macular degeneration that you see too. So some forms of retinal detachment, things like that. There's what's really, really kind of it's geeky neat, but not so neat if you have to deal with it, is it shows in the picture that there is a blurry spot in the middle. But if you actually have this vision impairment, there is an absence of something. It's like looking at a puzzle that you've pushed all the pieces of the puzzle together to the middle, and the pieces of the middle of the puzzle aren't assembled. So it's not like the picture in the middle is blurry. The picture in the middle of the puzzle doesn't exist. So it's hard to explain if you don't have it. And I'm sure I'm not doing it right. But, nature of the beast. Peripheral loss, you have your glaucoma, your retinitis pigmentosa. That's like looking at something in your refrigerator through, I might put in the implications here. It's like looking at things through a straw, but often it's like looking at things through a paper towel tube or a toilet paper tube. Just the idea is you have that very limited field that you're looking at your life through, and you're moving your head a lot. It's a lot of turning and twisting to get what everybody else can get by not doing that. Navigating in dark environments with these kinds of losses is also challenging. So these people tend to need more light, but again, not always. Then we have my very favorite, my special kind. It's called cortical vision impairment. Cortical vision impairment is that there's nothing wrong with your eyes. Not a stinking thing. Your eyes are absolutely fine. Beautiful little orbs stuck in your face. But the problem isn't your eyes. The problem is the connection between your eyes and your brain. And it's a processing challenge. So a lot of times with students that have this particular type of vision impairment, it's often accompanies other sorts of disabilities, like often with epilepsy or hydrocephaly or other sorts of brain involvement. You see this a lot in shaken baby syndrome for kids, strokes, cardiac events, stuff like that. Any sort of oxygen deprivation to the brain. You see this. So your eyes are fine, basically, but it's the processing and it's your brain. So there's a little bit more information on cortical vision impairment as we go. There's also a video that I think is really kind of neat that talks about vision impairment as a spectrum. And I really like the way, wow, I must really have my stuff set really funny because it didn't show up right for me. But this guy does a very nice job talking about vision impairment as a spectrum. And I really encourage you, if you have time or the desire, to go back and watch this guy. He really does a really, really nice job. So what does this have to do with accessibility and making your documents accessible? Well, first of all, are there any questions in the chat that address how vision impairment itself works?
So far, no, Amy.
Cool. We can keep going. All right. So because you saw, hopefully, if I did a good enough job, if I did my job, you understand that there's a lot of different kinds of vision impairments that can be affecting people's eyes and the way they see things very differently. And because of that, making documents easier to read, it can be kind of challenging because you have to make them fully, you have to make them so that everybody can see that has the same sort of vision impairment. So I'm going to use a series of images as we go. And I'm going to ask for some audience participation here. So hopefully do not look ahead. Do not cheat and look ahead, guys. I'm going to trust you that you're not going to do this, okay? Because this is part of the fun. Because I'm going to ask you to tell me what you notice in the following slides to see what we can do to make the image or the document better. And we're going to talk about why. So I also like Star Wars because I'm a big old geek like that. Cats and Star Wars. You have Star Wars and cats with lightsabers. You make me a happy person. Anyway, so this is a picture of Yoda. So this is an experiment. What attributes of this image would make it challenging for somebody with a vision impairment to see? What about this image would make it harder?
So far, Amy, people are saying the font style, the color, the letters
Yep.
blend, dark font, low contrast.
All of those things. And we'll address every single one of those things. Great job, folks. You're seeing it. You got this. Okay. So let's talk about why color and contrast are important. Most individuals with vision impairment and a lot of the general public, actually, and we were talking about this before the session started, there are people that reading text that doesn't stand out is a challenge. Not only is it a challenge to see visually, but it's also grabbing your attention if you think about it. If I'm looking at something, I want something that grabs my attention, and making it visually accessible will do that. So in choosing text colors, and I'm sorry about the school bells, make sure the background color and the text color contrast. The best options are black on white or white on black. Doesn't matter either one. Both work. People typically like now will like to use white on black, partly because it reduces the glare. So, and it also, if you're talking electronic documents, it uses less battery power if you have the black in the background and the white. So when they talk about dark mode, people are like, oh, I love dark mode. Dark mode's so easy on the eyes. And it is, don't get me wrong, it is. But the reason dark mode is often used is to reduce battery usage on devices because you'll use less battery because you're producing less light, which seems really odd, but I'm promise it works. Here's a nice article here that's Seeing My Way, a third grader talks about color blindness and assistive technology. So if you've got some time, that's a nice one. So we'll talk color and contrast. If you're using Google Docs or Word in your browser, the WebAIM color contrast checker will work well. It allows you to pick the value of the color that the text is and then the background color. Installed Word version of Word, same thing. There's a color picker. These links just show you how to do that and how to check for that. This is one of the things that you have to check manually. An automated checker does not, at this point in time, reliably check color contrast well at all. So here's the examples with some improved. The only thing I changed on here was the contrast. Now, which one's better? We got to vote.
I vote for the white font.
Yeah, I like that one
White
too.
fonts are coming in. Yep.
Yep, white font. Yep. Yep. It's also makes it a little clearer that it's part of the picture because otherwise it looks sort of weird. But anyway, there's ways to fix that. So next thing, what do you think we should fix next? We'll see if that's what's next in the slides.
It's coming in fonts, font style, font size,
Okay.
type.
All right. Good. All right. Text and font. Ta-da! We have a winner. You guys are getting it. So clean fonts. So fonts should be clean. Good examples include Verdana, any Open Sans font, Arial, any sans serif font is generally acceptable. We're going to talk about what that means because I had to do some digging as to what a sans serif meant a few years ago when I was looking into this. It's really cool. Don't use, if you can get away with it, Comic Sans, anything with a lot of curvature or anything that's heavy or overly thin. Anything serif is generally not acceptable. I personally, I know there's been a big thing lately about, Calibri. I don't like Calibri font. I think it's too thin, but everybody's got a preference. But as long as it is a sans serif font, it's generally considered acceptable, accessibility wise, and from that. So sans serif and serif. So here's the thing. The main difference between serif and sans serif fonts, and I'm going to trip over these words for the rest of this presentation, is what these serifs are. And what they are is, if you look at this, this diagram here, you have serifs, and these are they're circled here, the little flourishes on the letters. Sans serif means that they don't have these little flourishes. That some people can make that, whether visually impaired or not, having reading difficulties can have a bigger challenge with serif fonts. What's interesting is people who have vision impairments, and it's not every person with a vision impairment, and it's not every person that has a vision, because again, we've talked about this. You can have intersecting disabilities. Guess what? It's not a one size fits all. We can get dealt all sorts of cards, people. So if you have a vision impairment and happen to be dyslexic, sometimes that open dyslexic font will not be readable to that person with a vision impairment because their vision impairment is such that open dyslexic font is actually not helpful for them, so they can't read it. It's also the opposite can also be true. People who may not have a dyslexia or a reading issue, that open font might actually work better. So it's really important to try lots of different ones, but generally keep clear of anything with any flourishes if you can get away with it. Other information. So some students don't see those flourishes while other students do. And it can, especially if the font is smaller, some of those flourishes can make the font blend more and make it harder to read. An interesting fact is when we were kids, everything. Okay, turn me in your paper. It has to be 12 font Times New Roman. Times New Roman is not a sans serif font, and we should really avoid it. So I didn't really know that. So I always went to Times New Roman because I thought that that's what everybody used all the time before I really did a whole lot of research into this. So I kind of thought that was interesting. And we talked about the open dyslexic font styles already. So I think we've covered that. So here is the image again here with the with the font changed. So there's one more thing that we can change to make this more accessible. It's very small and I can't tell that it's even there, but I know that it is because I made it. So is there something that anybody can tell that should be changed in this to make it the most accessible it can be?
Amy, while answers are coming in, someone also asked, what is writing with what is wrong, I think she meant, with Comic Sans? And then people are saying italics, bold.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Comic Sans, because it has that slanting curvature and it has the fancier font. Anything that has that curvature, is that fancier font. I'm not saying you should never use it. I'm just saying don't use it as the primary font for like a document. I mean, very few people would do that, but you never know. I also encourage people not to stick it in the middle of something that's important. And that brings us right back to this image. and what people are saying. It says do or do not, there is no try. There is no try, and again, I can't see it, but I know it's there, is in italic. And the thing is, italics, bold, or underlines should never be used, any font attribute should never be used to emphasize anything. So any color, any sort of change in font style or size should not be used to convey emphasis. So any enlarged text, things like that, because screen readers and a lot of times people with vision impairments, they can't tell that that text attribute is any different than the surrounding text. Think of it as having an overly chatty friend that tells you everything you're passing on a car trip. It's totally information overload. If your screen tells you all of the font or punctuation as you pass it, then you're hearing everything. So in order to know that everything is, what's in italics and what's in bold and what's in a different color, your screen reader or you're getting all this more information than you need. And if you get more information than you need, are you able to focus on what's important? And the answer is usually no. And I feel like I might have approached this particular slide maybe differently than I could have. But my point being that if you're having your screen reader or your screen tell you the font of everything that you're passing, you're not going to be able to recognize when something is way different all the time. To just, process that in your brain and, see if that makes sense. So avoid using font types, font size, or color to convey meaning. So how would you convey meaning if you didn't use those? Use the words important, note, please remember, or warning. Use those words. It's not like you can't use these things to convey meaning. It just shouldn't be the only thing that conveys the meaning. So important, please read. Or please remember to lock your door. Warning, high voltage. We'll always say warning before high voltage. They never really say one thing without the other. But you want more than one way to call attention. So this is the final image after we made all the changes we just talked about. I did make a couple other ones that added to it that we didn't talk about too much. A couple of the other changes were I added a line space here that I think this made this a little easier to read between, and I also added a space between the dash and Yoda because I thought if you look back at the original, this to me looked too close together. Oops, I went too far back. There.
Amy, Mike had a question on this stuff. He goes, why do we have so many different types of fonts?
It's a good question, and that's a historical question. Why do we have so many different types of cereals? Or anything really? Because when we started having this stuff, people had, when you look at how historically technology started, you had a typewriter. That's what you had. And everything was in the same font all the time. Well, then when people realized that they could print things on their own, people started, it was a thing. People would make their own fonts, and they still do. People who are like super good at this kind of thing that, by the way, not me, literally make their own fonts. And some people make and sell their own fonts. If you buy, like, if you're one of those people that likes to do tactile graphics and design, companies actually make entire fonts, and you have to buy the add-on package to add the font on. So it's a lot of times it's for marketing, it's a lot of times for style. So people just kept on adding more and more and more. And as more became available, some of them became free because they weren't being developed anymore. So then they started becoming packaged with Microsoft and stuff like that. And that's how come you have so many choices. That's a very, very short answer to that question. But I do encourage you to look it up because some of this stuff is really super interesting if you look, if you dig too deep. Either that or I'm a giant nerd, or both can be true, because two things can be true at the same time.
Amy, Judith also asked about if you're going to talk about alt text, which I think is later.
Yes, yes, we are going to talk a little bit about that. Good questions.